I'm a Protestant, and I just spent a week in Lisbon, Portugal, following the life of a Catholic saint. Church by church, shrine by shrine, and I walked away with one of the most convicting spiritual lessons I've had from a monk who's been dead for almost 800 years. I'm Joey, this is Christianity United, and yes, I was just blessed with an opportunity to spend some time in Portugal. It was amazing. It is a wonderful country steeped in Catholic heritage. Leading up to the trip, I was so stoked. I was looking forward to the churches, the sightseeing, and most importantly, a visit to Fatima. But Portugal had other plans. No matter what town I was in, this monk kept popping up, holding what looked like baby Jesus. Whether I was at a plaza, a gift shop, a church, or even a bakery, this monk was literally everywhere. And here I thought Ronaldo was Portugal's mascot. I learned that this guy's name is St Anthony of Padua. And the more I dug into his story, the more I realized his life was pretty exceptional. So I decided to follow it right here in Lisbon, Portugal. You see, even though St. Anthony is associated with Padua, Italy, he was actually born in Lisbon. His original name was actually Fernando, not Anthony, and he was born to a wealthy family. He was rolling in the dough. And he entered the world in a pretty significant moment for Portuguese history, because Lisbon had just been reclaimed by Muslim rule just a few decades earlier. So this was a city that was rebuilding itself. It had this vibrant, anything's possible energy. The house where he was born stood in this spot for centuries. It became a small chapel in the 1400s and then a proper church, which was destroyed by an earthquake, but then rebuilt. And that is the Baroque masterpiece you see in front of you today. Now, full admittance, Baroque architecture isn't normally my style. It's pretty overwhelming sometimes. But I really enjoyed this church, and it just felt like the colors on the walls and the ceiling were alive. The gold made everything regal and elegant. There was a group of Catholics praying the rosary together in Portuguese. This church wasn't just a relic of history, it was a vibrant part of the Catholic community here. But the real reason I was here was downstairs. That's where the shrine of St. Anthony is located. The gravity that this location carried started to weigh on me, like I was stepping on holy ground, like no joke. I looked up and noticed a tile mural of Pope John Paul II kneeling at the shrine. I entered the room and it was quiet. Two monks had finished up their prayers right as I got into the room, and they got up from the kneeler and welcomed me to take their place silently with a smile. As they left the room, I took their place, kneeling on the same kneeler that the Pope once used. I know Catholics would give a lot for that opportunity, and so me being there felt surreal and humbling. As I faced the shrine, I felt something that I can only describe as smallness. Not no like, woe is me, I suck kind of way. It's more like the kind of self-awareness that reminds you how vast our God is, how he uses every kind of person, every tradition, every circumstance to carry out his purposes. I prayed there for a bit and left even more determined to follow the story of St. Anthony, because his birthplace is only the beginning. There's something crazy that happens to St. Anthony just up the street from his home, and it's something I think about every time I'm facing temptation now. This is Lisbon Cathedral. And honestly, cathedral feels like an understatement. This thing covers an entire city block. It looks like a fortress. Honestly, it kind of gives like Hogwarts vibes, which I think is actually a fitting analogy because this is where St. Anthony went to school. The interior was magnificent. Large paintings hung on the stone walls and guided you upward toward the vaulted ceilings. People silently sat in pews facing the altar as they prayed. My mind wandered to the countless amount of experiences St. Anthony probably had in this cathedral. He was baptized here, right in this baptismal font. He joined the choir and sang hymns. He learned the ins and outs of the Catholic Mass. He probably sat on benches joking around with friends, meandering past columns with a tutor while discussing theology. While most of St. Anthony's time here would look like any other students, it was also in this place that he faced something, a darkness that was lurking just around the corner. As I walked up some steps, I came upon this golden cross in the wall. It didn't strike me as anything special, to be honest. I almost just breezed right by it. But that cross is actually a lifeline for St. Anthony in a moment of demonic attack. Fernando Martins, as he was still known then, was being overwhelmed with temptation. We don't know exactly what kind, but on this staircase, on this particular day, it was becoming too much. So he did something simple, like literally almost embarrassingly simple. I wouldn't have thought of it. He just drew a cross on the stone wall in front of him. He brought to mind the sacrifice of Christ. And it worked. The enemy immediately fled from him. The spot of the drawing is now commemorated by this gold engraved cross placed over that exact spot where St. Anthony drew his cross. The story obviously made me pause, and as I stared at this cross, I started meditating on how simple St. Anthony's approach was to temptation. He didn't starve himself to death. He didn't go into his room and read the entire book of Job or something like that. He simply brought his mind to the cross. He remembered the sacrifice of Christ. I often overcomplicate spiritual warfare and try to come up with like a 10-step plan to avoid temptation, to combat it. I think I need to have an approach more like St. Anthony's. I just need to remember Jesus has already won the battle. He's already paid the price. And this zeal for Christ that St. Anthony had, it carried him all the way to the life of a monastic. St. Anthony entered St. Vincent's monastery at age 15. 15! He took vows of poverty, celibacy, daily prayer before most of us even knew what we wanted to do when we grow up. That is insane to me. And I'd love to show you the inside of St. Vincent's, but I didn't make it in time before it was closed. Sorry about that. So I'm going to show you this other monastery, St. Geronimo's, as I finish St. Anthony's story, which honestly I think you'll forgive me for because this next part is where it gets really good. After several years at St. Vincent's, Anthony was transferred to the Augustinian house in Coimbra, north of Lisbon. He spent close to a decade there deepening his studies, but something happened in Coimbra that would change the entire direction of his life. In the year 1220, the remains of 5 Franciscan friars arrived in Coimbra. These men had traveled to Morocco to preach the gospel, and they had been martyred for it. Their bodies brought back to become relics. St. Anthony didn't let this discourage him. It actually just inspired him even more. He saw what it could look like to lay down your life for Christ completely. And he made a decision. He wanted to be a Franciscan like those 5 monks were. And he wanted to preach the gospel in Morocco, even if it meant he would die for his faith. He sought out the local Franciscans, received their habit, and officially took the name of Anthony. And he set sail to Morocco. Except he got really, really sick. He was so sick, he wasn't going to fulfill the rest of his mission. And so he was put on a boat back to Portugal. But the winds pushed that boat completely off course, and he ended up in Italy. I've been reflecting on this a lot after getting home. Anthony surrendered everything to go in the direction he thought God was leading him to. But God ended up directing him somewhere else. And what happened because of that redirection? He ended up in Italy at an assembly of Franciscan friars from across Europe. There was an ordination service taking place one day, and the preacher that was supposed to give a homily just no-showed, didn't show up. And Anthony, who had never publicly preached before, mind you, was asked to fill in right there on the spot. He opened his mouth, and the room was changed. He became almost overnight one of the most renowned preachers in the history of the church, and he preached through France and Italy for the rest of his life. God had closed a door in Morocco, and he opened up an entire continent for St. Anthony instead. And this, by far, was the most valuable lesson for me, the thing that I'm still thinking about. Because full transparency, I'm a bit of a planner. I like making plans for myself, and I hate when they get interrupted. It really irks me. And I'm not always a pleasant person when that happens. That's where I see pride and anger bubble up the most, just being transparent with you. So St. Anthony's willingness to just go wherever the Spirit of God took him, regardless of his own plans that he had in mind, that moved me. That's touched me. It's convicted me. I want to be better at that. I want to be able to just let go of my expectations and just do the tasks that God puts right in front of me. And by His grace, actually, even on this trip, God was teaching me to do just that. I went to Portugal to visit Fatima. That was the goal, the only goal I really had. And Fatima was incredible. I went, and I'm definitely going to make a whole video on it. So stay tuned for that one. But I didn't expect St. Anthony to stop me in my tracks like this, to speak to me the way that he did. But I think that was all by God's design. Anthony was a 13th century friar. I'm a 21st century Protestant. And yet, we're fighting the same battles. Temptation from spiritual enemies, surrendering to God's plan and letting Him redirect us when our ideas of what we should do fall apart. Those aren't Catholic struggles or Protestant struggles. They aren't middle-aged struggles or modern-day struggles. They're Christian struggles. And St. Anthony walked through these struggles honestly, humbly, in a way that I think all of us could learn from, no matter what branch of Christianity you're a part of. I think this is a little picture of what Christian unity actually looks like. Not ignoring differences. It's just being humble enough to learn from other people and to hear them out, even if they're 800 years removed from us. It's choosing curiosity over condemnation. And if you got that kind of curiosity or you're interested in it, this channel is the place for you. A few months ago, I got the opportunity to explore the religious history of Iceland. And it's absolutely fascinating, especially the part of the story where a wizard tells the entire country to convert to Christianity. That's all the explanation I'm giving right now. If you want to hear more of that story, you should check out this video. And while you're at it, consider liking, subscribing, commenting, maybe join the channel membership so you can get early access to videos. And most importantly, stay open to the Spirit of God. Walk through the doors He opens for you. And maybe somebody in the future is going to be inspired by the life you lived for Christ. I'm Joey. This is Christianity United.